if a business model is broken, you can try to work with it. You know it's not going to work. When somebody comes to you with nonsense, you could put money behind it, but it's not going to work. I mean, again, there's exceptions to everything. There's a lot of things in life that are unfair, but we have been let go as an agency on areas where we've hit home runs.
Hey, I'm Armando Leduc, producer, film actor, and owner of Leduc Entertainment. I have chosen a life off the beaten path and wanted to find others that are doing the same. Spaghetti on the Wall is a show based on all of the years that I've thrown spaghetti on the wall and nurtured what stuck. We will share fun stories, ideas, tips, tricks, and more. Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Spaghetti on the Wall once again. Welcome, Seth Price, everybody.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Dude, an accomplished attorney, transformational thought leader, and you are the business backbone of Price Benowitz LLP, as well as the founder of CEO of BluShark Digital. Tell us what BluShark Digital is.
Sure, it's one of the innovative companies that helps lawyers and law firms, particularly in the B2C business consumer space, get online and optimize for ideal results with SEO and PPC, LSAs, all that good stuff. Basically, all things digital for lawyers.
So, tell me about that space and why it's so necessary in terms of like attorneys in particular, right? Because they need to have everything if they want to compete in that space, right?
Right. So starting at the first place, it's the fact that it's a hyper competitive space. It's up there as competitive as anything. Costs of clicks are very, very dear, et cetera. And you've now hung out with enough lawyers that you know that the biorhythms of the lawyers and the law firms are different than other organizations. I feel like our secret sauce is that not only do we know the digital, the SEO very, very well, but being born out of a law firm. This is essentially what was 8 years ago my in-house digital team is now a team of over 100 people that are every day trying to innovate and move the needle, not just substantively, but as I'm sure you're aware, that marketing and the social media that you guys do such a great job with video works so much better when it's collaborative. If somebody writes you a check and says, dance for me, it's not going to work nearly as well as when you actually have them as a partner who can help you create content and find things that resonate. So for us, figuring out what makes a law firm tick, and for us, it may be navigating the waters. I know you work with some very large law firms where there may be a principal and several people below them and a marketing director and marketing managers, and figuring out how do you actually get things accomplished on the one hand, or on the other hand, there may be somebody who doesn't have all of those different accoutrements and staffing, where you have to somehow be engaging enough to get directly to them and get them to do things, because without that, you have no substance to be optimized. So, we do everything we can to understand how busy and how dysfunctional, frankly, many law firms are, and get results despite all of that.
Let me ask you this, because you guys, great, you can bring them a ton of a ton of leads. How do you talk to attorneys that don't necessarily have their intake together, and how are you handling those things?
So look, nobody has their intake together. It's a constantly evolving process. I'm humble enough. I have a 30-person intake team at this point. We were 13 people in-house pre-COVID. We are now 30 spread out around the country and around the world at this point, doing everything we can to slice and dice. But that is one of the most frustrating things as a marketer, is that we are beholden to their intake. So yes, we have call rail and we can listen and tell, hey, this is a meltdown, you got to do something. But it is one of those things that as a marketer, we're judged on. The ROI that somebody gets only comes if we're able to produce revenue for them. So there are a lot of places where things can break down, and that is certainly one of the most tumultuous, whether it's one of the larger firms that has a multi-person setup, or whether it's somebody just getting started out. One of the most frustrating parts is we see some people who are sort of referral-based practices that are morphing into a marketing-based practice, and that's like the hugest red flag. I use my dad as an example. He's 88 and still practicing law. He's in New York. He's of
That's
counsel
awesome.
in my firm, but it is awesome. And I sent him, he's a trust and estates lawyer, but I sent him a criminal case for a guy who works in his office. And I said to him Friday at 4 o'clock. And Monday at 10 o'clock, he calls me back and says, oh, they already have a lawyer. I'm like, of course they have a lawyer. This is not, in a marketing firm, it's seconds, minutes, hours is forever, And so, but if you've been practicing your Yale class of 59, people wait for your call back. Right? They may not love it, but they'll wait 2-3 days, right? That doesn't happen in our world. The people that in the B2C world that we deal with, it's instant gratification. And part of what I love about SEO is people are finding you that have never heard of you before. They see you, they have a need, just like a plumber. The hot water heater in your house is exploding and your significant other is yelling at you to get it fixed. The first person you get on the phone who's going to be able to understand your problem and is going to find a solution at a reasonable price, that's going to get your business. And if you don't have that mentality, I literally was on the phone the other day with a really nice firm, but everything goes through the receptionist. It gets sent out. I'm like, for example, local service ads, very, very important for personal injury lawyers. It's a paid pay-per-call component that Google brought in a couple of years ago, and PI firms want as much as they can. And it's a really good deal that Google's giving. You don't get many good deals from Google. The question is, how many can you get? And Google, because of this, has the upper hand, like they do in many areas. But if you don't answer the calls or you delay answering the calls, they will ding you for 90 days. It's brutal. So if you're set up with a receptionist who takes lunch for an hour or just checks out, you're done. It needs to be tight. So it is throwing it together. It is tying all of that together, and it's not perfect. I love the name of the podcast because I look at all this like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. I've been going with this since the early to mid 90s. And what I would say is that as a digital agency, part of the reason that I like this space is we have some sort of insight, because if we can bring all of this together, the results can be amazing.
Yeah. So you guys help bring the people in. Do you guys just say, hey, if the intake is not where it needs to be, we're going to wait? Or do you guys go ahead and take that client on too?
Well, look, it is with SEO, it takes time. So if the intake is broken, I would not recommend LSAs because you're going to get screwed. I would recommend the proprietor of the firm or top deputy having a bat phone, a cell phone that the stuff goes to. And don't even, if your intake is broken and LSAs will make you money, don't bastardize it by putting it in that big bucket. There better be a bat phone for it. But, if your intake is dysfunctional, you got real issues. And look, there are people who are massive marketers and they have dysfunctional intake because they have so many calls. Okay, so you're a bunch of stuff gets lost. Not good, but for most of us mortals out there, we care about ROI. And the sooner you can get KPIs on number of calls answered, number of wants that are converted, those are really, really important, and those are fundamentals. So we have heart-to-hearts with people, and there are clients we turn down all the time saying, hey, you're not ready for this, or hey, we're going to be rolling this out, and in 6 months we expect there to be real volume. You better have it figured out, or you're not going to be happy because you're paying us and you're not getting the revenue back to be able to justify it.
Yeah. And what happens when, because I've been there too, is like you it's not your fault that they can't close deals, right? But then they want to maybe blame you for it.
Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, if the model, couple things, and I think you get this. If a business model is broken, then you can try to work with it. It's not going to work. When somebody comes to you with nonsense, you could put money behind it, but it's not going to work. I mean, again, there's exceptions to everything. So, there's a lot of things in life that are unfair, but we have been let go as an agency on areas where we've hit home runs. We know we're making the phone ring. It's there, and you scratch your head because not everything's a home run, but when you hit a home run and somebody's like, yeah, I'm not making money, like, we can see it. The phone calls are there. They're not being converted. We can coach, we can talk, we can bring them resources. But at the end of the day, it's their entity. And that's why some people stop doing what I do and just generate more business for themselves. I love maybe I'm crazy, I love the idea of, working with and helping people around the country, now around the world. It's a lot of fun. But it is problematic. Now, flip side is I don't have to, imagine if I did this all for myself and I had some massive call center. That's a whole nother issue, right? Because if you have, 1,000 people answering the phone, that means you have 1,000th worst person answering the phone. When you have 100 employees, you have 100th worst employee. This is my own, so the idea that these are being done and managed by people has the potential for greatness. But yeah, certain amount of time, things are dysfunctional. And it also depends on where you are. We all know that getting rid of people isn't easy. Looking at my own personal journey on intake, there are times when I had an amazing intake director, and one guy we had back in the day was a double Purple Heart recipient. He was just wonderful and brought a team together. And then he went off to do something else in life several years later, and we ended up with a guy who had some serious issues. And it really, it was very tumultuous. At the moment, we have this amazing intake director who's put together this incredible team and has deputies and middle-level management, and is a sight to behold, but that doesn't happen overnight, and it's a journey, and it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I'm saying this right now. All it would take is the wrong person to have some sort of family emergency, and next thing you know, and I think that with any business, it's the more spaghetti we throw at the wall, the more chance we have for some stands to stick. That the more that we are able to, with time, build redundancies, that is what makes for the stable business that will do really well. Otherwise, you're just one person away from real problems.
So where you are in your career, I'm sure you're not dealing. I'm sure you get to pick and choose what it is that you work on these days. So what are some things that excite you nowadays that you're all like, yeah, this is exciting. This really, gets me going. And what are some things that you avoid?
Great question. I would say right now, the areas that I'm sort of pushing really hard is figuring out where we can layer AI into digital and law firms, for that matter, figuring out where there are efficiencies, understanding some are true AI and some is really just automation with better packaging. But the idea being that what is possible today is really exciting, and it's fascinating because I have 2 different buckets or teams, and what is generally a younger team on digital. There's a few people my age, but many of the people who love digital are younger and have sort of been drawn to it. They are really excited to take and test many of the new technologies and new apps and new processes that are possible. At the law firm, lawyers by general go to law school because they're risk averse, and they are the last people to adopt. So we are seeing really cool things coming down where you can dump, and as you can create your own universes to layer the AI, like dumping a deposition into a program so that you can then ask questions of it, taking your employee manual and making it so that people could Slack questions to it. And some would say they could go read the manual, but we know that people are much more likely they want to ask questions, and if we can get those questions extracted from those things, just really cool things that are happening. Now, cool is what I'm always sort of there are 2 types of things, right? Ones that are neat to talk about, and the other interesting. There's interesting and things that make money. And I have a law partner. I've been buddies with this guy, Dave Benowitz, since 1987. We went to college together, went to law school together, we now have the firm together. And one of the things that I would tell you is that we take a ton of meetings with different people, different industries, investment operators, all sorts of stuff. And whenever he leaves and he says, that's interesting, that's always code for, it's not going to make any money. Meaning, versus when there's something that's there, but interesting is that bucket where it's cool, but it's not necessarily a path to revenue or meaningful revenue. And so what I'm trying to figure out is what's interesting and what's going to make money, and try to keep that as the beacon, because, look, I can also spend time with my kids or watch sports or do whatever. So I don't want it to be that it's just cool, and it is, but I really want to get to the point where it's stuff that will move the needle for the firm. And I remember the early days of the dot-com world in the 90s, when there was all sorts of excitement going on, and not everything made it. But I feel like if you roll your sleeves up, and you get your hands dirty, that you're going to be able to figure out what comes next, and that the newest technologies, it's the first time in a while that I'm really excited. I didn't fully get the whole virtual city thing where we're going to have a headset on and walk into law firms. Maybe that'll happen at some point. I didn't quite fully grasp it. I don't fully grasp NFTs as far as like a entertainment vehicle, but when I see what's possible with AI in the business sense, I'm really excited.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah. Web3 and that whole nine is super fascinating for sure. Let me ask you about retainer clients, right? Because you have retaining clients. How is that? I always liken it to like, a relationship, like a love relationship. How do you keep your clients sort of on the hook? Because you've worked with clients, I'm sure, for years, and it's trying to keep that relationship alive. How are you doing that?
It's funny. I'll take it from the other end for a second, then I'll come back to this, which is, much of recruiting as well as client business development is like dating. There are a ton of analogies to it, right? You want somebody to work for your company, and you first have a Zoom with them. It might be a phone call to a recruiter. That might be a coffee. Then you have drinks, maybe dinner. Then you fly them in for an in-person, and that might be the equivalent of like weekend at the beach to see whether or not somebody you want to spend time with. No different than business development on the client side. And yeah, I think that it's something that's not talked about a lot, but a lot of focus is put on the sort of beginning of the relationship, right? You meet somebody, they have a need, they're deciding between you and somebody else, they're dating a few people, and then they commit. And I think just like, I'm 17 years in on marriage, and 20 years in the relationship. Thank you. That there are things that as the relationship goes on, that you want to make sure that you don't take somebody for granted, that you do you are paying the attention you need to, and that the resources, whether it be monetary or whether it be time and attention, are there. I would say that something that I see, and I'm curious to know, Rhonda, if you've seen this, is one of the things that are out there, that I look at what we do for lawyers in the B2C space as fundamental. It works. It's worked for a while. It doesn't look like it's not going to work anytime soon. There are a couple risk factors, but we're not a shiny object, right? To me, the shiny objects are things that are popping up that, I'm going to retire off Pinterest, or, whatever it is. There are a bunch of shiny objects, and that they're always popping up. And we had one client that said, "Hey, I'm getting rid of my digital spend because I got a cold call that there's a TV campaign with like a retired Mexican wrestler, and I'm going all in on that." And there's all sorts of different ways. So I think that just like in dating, there are people that don't stay committed. They're every 9 months in a different, off on some different tangent, and that's true with employees. One of the things I look at when recruiting is, can somebody stay at a company 2 to 3 years? And if they can't, if they have a successive 9, 15, 8-month, terms, just like in dating, could you be it? Yes, you could be the one, but there's also a good chance that person is not capable of it. And to quote the Sex and the City concept of the taxi driving around, and the moment the light goes on, the next guy that gets in, that he's ready to get married, then that's it. I look at it like I'd like to make sure that it's a win-win, that ideally as a business we make money and deliver services, if it's an over the long term, that these quick little things are not why we're in business, particularly in our area, because we are not doing a type of marketing, particularly the SEO side, which happens overnight. And dividends multiply per year like compound interest, so that when we get somebody who's willing not to look for the shiny object and is willing to commit and build in that, the ROI can be incredible. And when we see people that are displeased, it is usually people that are not willing to wait out that 6, 9, 15 months, depending what it is, to get to critical mass, where you say, okay, I see it happening, I can buy into it, and it's only going to get better over time. And there have been a number of instances where people didn't have the patience, and it is just time. And then as right after they leave us, the work, the work that we did has built and is there. And that, I would say, objectively, professionally, is one of the sadder moments, because you know that you're there, and you just need somebody to be able to be along the journey with you.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. I think it, and that's just most people. I think they're not really interested in the boring monotony of staying consistent, right? Like it's boring to stay consistent, but that's where the growth is. That's where the
absolutely. Look, I'm in a market where there are lots of different people. Some send supermodels to trade shows. Some drive very expensive cars. And somebody once and insulted us by calling it boring. I'm like, fine. I mean, like, look, we innovate. We have great, we do work. I mean, there are people at digital agencies who have almost no employees and dozens or scores or hundreds of clients. And I'm like, there's only so much work that you can do. If you divide up the number of people by the amount of clients you have, and you're sort of just like, how much work could anybody do on a given day for a client? And it is something that, when I look at it, we probably have, between employees and contractors, 300 individuals wake up every morning paid by us to do things. And and again, it's the way the work comes together is what's essential, but it is, boring. I don't love it. I don't want to be thought of as boring, but if boring makes money, I'll be boring.
yeah.
Our friend from Buffett, right? He doesn't invest in exciting places, but it makes money, and if it makes money, stay with it.
Yeah. Maybe surround the personal life with the exciting stuff, because you've been so boring and consistent with the business that you're able to afford that extravagant and fun life that you want.
I'm not telling people they shouldn't have excitement. I'm telling people they have a boring life. But how often do you see the person who's like that, the highest highs and the lowest lows, right? Those relationships don't generally last in personal, and they don't necessarily last in business. Again, I'm not looking for somebody to be boring. I just spent a summer traveling to Dubai and Australia. I'd like to think that I'm not a boring person. At the same time, there is something where there are people, and I've had them in my life personally, that are it's exciting, it's different, it's new, it's frenetic, but it's not healthy. And generally, those crash and burn over time, whether it's the relationship or themselves.
100%. What was your spaghetti on the wall moment? Like how did you know that this is what you wanted to do?
It was not, to me, I guess, as an outsider, you could look at it spaghetti on the wall, because I tried a bunch of different stuff, right? I worked for a law firm. I went to New York during the dot-com bubble, and until that exploded, I was doing really well in New York. I did a stint as a TV correspondent and TV legal correspondent. I've done a lot of cool stuff, did some real estate. So I've thrown plenty of spaghetti at the wall, but when you're living it, it doesn't feel that way. For me, it was, versus other areas where, let's say, we're trying to figure out how best to optimize content. We throw a lot, because you're doing it once to see what sticks. In your life, you're doing sort of one at a time. So it's like, while the analogy it holds true, as the person doing it, it wasn't like I was throwing 10 things there. Although I had a life moment. I guess before I started the law firm, I walked the trade show for the franchise community, see if there are any franchises out there. I looked at real estate. So I guess I was throwing my spaghetti, but for me, it sort of happened quickly. My law partner wanted to practice law. I didn't. So we decided to divide and conquer. He would be the lawyer. I would be the business person and the marketer and answer the phone. And we built a website, hired another lawyer, built another website, hired a lawyer, and it happened organically and naturally. So I want to say stuff came easy, but we were right place, right time, and we were able to build this footprint. I would see stuff because, I love the spaghetti at the wall concept, but there are times when you see the spaghetti falling off and you're like, okay, I need some stickier strands, because if it's not sticking. So one example was, from the time I started the law firm, every 2 years I would hire a marketing assistant, whether it be a man or a woman, and they'd stay with me for 2 years, and they all left after 2 years. One went to government, one became a sports agent. They did all sorts of stuff. And I realized that if the spaghetti kept falling off the wall, that's a bad thing. And that's when I took one of our rock stars internally. I started off as an intern and had come to marketing, was running marketing, and said, look, I want to be able to get a lot of spaghetti to stick to the wall. And we spun BluShark into its own entity out of the law firm's digital group. And it's interesting, because when we first started, and taking the analogy one step further, we would hire a lot of people, throw spaghetti at the wall, and a lot fell off. We had people coming to the office trading their Adderall pills. We had one guy who came with a laptop to day trade while doing his day job. I shudder to think what happens now that they're all working from home. But we had a lot of, and over time, we got more purposeful to say, hey, how can we find spaghetti that's more likely to stick at the wall? Because while it's great from a business concept to throw spaghetti and see what sticks, and I love it, and I use that analogy all day, but I'm today coming up with the next piece, which is, hey, maybe we could be smart, and if we have the half-cooked spaghetti, so it's more likely to be, have it. If it's hard, it's not going to stick, and if it's too sloppy, it's going to fall off. Can we systematically get the right spaghetti to throw so that we have a much higher percentage? That's going to, and that if we have a program called a fellowship program, like an internship, but with better branding, money, and a rotation, almost like a summer associateship at a law firm. So to me, I'm keeping the spaghetti with our team, and we're stirring the pot that they're getting to meet. And by the time that spaghetti is ready to work with us, and it's being thrown at the wall there, it is a pretty good chance to stick, because we've been able to get it to just the right temperature before we throw that spaghetti at the wall. And that means much more success. And while does something fall off occasionally? Yes, but we have a much higher percentage of that spaghetti stuck to the wall.
Heard. I love that. So
that's new here. I've never come up with this before, but feel free to use it.
It's good. I like that. How do you think law firms are dropping the ball with marketing these days?
I mean, there's so many different ways. I was just at a conference, and that question was sort of asked, and one of the answers given was that people sort of blindly follow what other people were doing. I would say that. I would say there's very often too much of a pivot, or a not staying consistent, which is tough, because how do you know when it's never going to work versus you haven't given it enough time? There's something I've seen myself, which is, I think that for a law firm to be successful, it really could use that marketing in-house talent. Even when somebody works with an agency, somebody wants to work with you or me, it works infinitely better if there's an intermediary and not just the principal. But that said, that is a challenging role to fill. There are very few people you pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm a B2C law firm, I need a marketing person. It's more of a developed community than it was before. But if you want somebody locally, it's really challenging. Anybody who's worked at Big Law, which there's a lot of in DC, they're not ready for what we're doing. If I told them what you do, they'd be like, what the hell is that? Big Law, does position pieces and LinkedIn videos, but nobody's being creative. Nobody's doing SEO. So I would say that it is getting the right team. And so a mistake that there are people that say, hey, I got this person who's going to be my marketing person because there's nowhere else for them to work at the firm, that type of stuff. They're my administrative assistant now. And again, history is written by that. Sometimes it works great, but a lot of times there are situations where those people can make a huge mess. And like many things in life, you get this. If you go into a place where their person knows video better than you, it's not destined to work well. But if somebody comes in sort of humble, saying, "Hey, I'm going to learn from this person. I'm going to learn as much as I can from these guys who do this day in and day out," that's much more likely to work.
110%. What's the best piece of advice you ever received?
Wow. I think that it's focusing on the team itself. That if you put the right team in place, incredible things can be accomplished. And I just picked up the book, Who Not How. that sort of crystallized some of that not very eloquently described advice. But the idea, and I look around and I see, like at BluShark, for example, I really have taken on the role of chairman. I don't, I do some business development, I speak at conferences, but I really don't have, for instance, in our EOS meetings, I don't have the meaningful rocks because I'm there to bring these ideas in, and we built that team. And I think partially due to myself, but really forced by some great leadership on that team, have stepped back and allowed them to keep a very cohesive culture, very positive culture that doesn't always comport well with a change agent who wants to push forward and get more. And that I think that I'm very, very fortunate in bringing a person like David Breton and our head of operations, Gabby, who do an amazing job of keeping the ship afloat and keeping culture in place. And I think that I've been able to, as I've sort of removed myself, now come back on an interpersonal part, but I'm still looked at as almost an outsider in a positive way, in that if you get like the average Gen Zer, and I'm generalizing greatly, but there's a 9 to 6 mentality that for my generation, and I know about yours, was a grind mentality. I got where I was by working late, taking phone calls on weekends, killing myself as an employee. Right? That's where I didn't have a piece of the action, but you did whatever it took. There is much more, particularly post-COVID, of a work-life balance motif. There's much more of there's no business catch-up on a Saturday. That was part of my growing up DNA. There was no unnecessary after-hours communication. And a lot of it's healthier. There's a lot of positive to it, but I also know, and it's sort of the pull and tug, but it's great that I have this sort of team that sort of, this is the piece, and I'll try to articulate it here. There are days that I get very frustrated because I can only imagine if that excess, sort of grind, kill yourself mentality existed. But I also look at turnover. And I look at things, and you look at like a law firm where people do grind and kill themselves, and everybody leaves except for the one guy or girl, woman who's going to make equity partner. That by doing things that are playing the long game, that aren't killing people, I've started, to send emails by hitting, on the weekend, Monday 8 a.m. so that it delivers it waiting for their inbox when they first look at it, rather than just, even though I'm not expecting them to work on the Saturday, but just taking it like those things. And this weekend at the law firm, there was an HR fire drill, and I was involved this weekend with one of our senior management people throughout the weekend, and it felt almost out of place. Like I was growing up, that was who I was and how I built my business, but working and keeping today's incredibly creative and dynamic people together, that is not what drives them. And I've sort of fully pivoted to the point where it actually felt out of place to be doing that on a weekend.
Wow. No, I feel you on that. Who, not how's fantastic. Did you read 10X is better than, is easier than 2X?
I have not yet, but I hear that's next on my list.
Fantastic book. Yeah. Man, I could talk to you for a while, man. You got you're super knowledgeable in your space. And maybe I'll bring you back on and we can, chop it up with some more marketing stuff. But tell them where they can find you.
Well, look, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm at BluShark Digital, BLU, sharkdigital.com. Seth there, Seth at Price Benowitz. I'm the type of person that shares my cell phone. You got any questions, find me on Facebook. I'm middle-aged, so I'm on Facebook, not Instagram. But I'm there in both, but truly at Facebook. And feel free to message me. And I don't have to be buying anything. I'll talk about marketing all day long. The stuff, I love it. Anything you do to help you or anybody in your audience, my feeling is if I can help somebody out, you never know where paying it forward comes back.
Yeah, for sure. BluShark, is that based on the Blue Ocean strategy?
No. I'll conclude with this sort of crazy story. We launched, we needed a name, and we went with BluSpark Digital. Spark was used other digital agencies. Blue is a good color. Digital is what we do. And I was rocking and rolling for about 9 months with a handful of clients until I got an ugly cease and desist letter that said, we are, something that doesn't like you using this. And I said, we could do that because we don't do what they do. And our website said that we did. So I called my first IP lawyer friend and said, what should I do? And he said, you can pay me $80,000 and then change your name or just change your name. And damn it. I called my second IP lawyer friend, same exact advice. So David Brenton, our president, and he and I are big hockey fans, and we're walking around the Caps game, and it was a Sharks game. I'm like, if we change a letter, at first I didn't love BluShark because I didn't know about the correlation with lawyers and sharks. I think it's not as much thought of today, but at one point that was sort of they were sort of synonymous in not a positive way. So it was very uncertain. And we changed the name. We had to comply with our, we stepped in some doo-doo for IP-wise. And for the first 3-4 months, I cringed every time I heard somebody answer the phone. I was like, oh, that's not it. But you know what? With time, I can't live without it. It's awesome. Our community is awesome. And once there was not a single employee, or I guess we've had 2 or 3 that stayed, but once we had sort of a clean group, once somebody's hired with a name, that's all they know. If you move offices and somebody's hired in that new office, nobody knows you've ever been anywhere else. And it is now sort of a great brand in the legal space and one that brings a big smile to my face.
That's very, very cool. All right, man. Well, that was Seth Price, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys are looking for digital services, do you guys just handle attorneys or you guys handle other businesses
We
too?
have a division that does medical, primarily elective medical, like plastic surgery, cosmetic dentistry, and that's BluShark Digital. And we have a home services division that is it's sort of beta stage. We have a handful of clients, but that is one that if anybody in your greater audience listening is interested in, I sort of feel like I've cut my teeth with legal. I'm not looking to do it, but if there's somebody out there listening who is interested in the home services space, I think we probably have a great opportunity for them.
Very, very cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Seth Price, and that was Spaghetti on the Wall. Thank you so much. Brought to you by LeDuc Entertainment for all of your social media marketing needs and podcasting. And you can watch Spaghetti on the Wall anywhere. Just look us up. We're all over the place. Over 100 episodes now, and we'll see y'all later.